right, come back at you again. First and foremost, I want to start off by giving up praises, honor, glory to Yahweh, Bashem Yahweh Shah, Bashem Kakwadash. Second, I want to give double honor to the apostles and Jesus that rule over our beloved elders and teachers. And peace, blessing, salutation to the hopeful elect out there. Slack, give me one moment. All right, so salutation to the hopeful elect, you so-called Negro, Latino, Hispanics, Native American, West Indies, which is this truth and this gospel has been given to through Yahweh Shah. Lord's will be edified. As a title from farmers to complete nigger shit. Let me see. I put in Google, how did black Americans go from farming into niggas, right? So the question touches on two separate historical and sociological topics: the socio-economic shift of black Americans from agricultural work to urban life. We all knew it was an agenda to pretty much destroy us as a nation, bring us over here, brought us over here. Well, I take that back. We had Gad here, which had already civilizations here, which the so-called white men stole, took, made war with Gad. You had Northern Kingdom, the Israel, Northern Kingdom, so-called Tainos, so-called Indians, the Mayans, Arawak, and the Incas, and the Aztecs, which, if you don't know, I would say do your research on them. But ultimately, they are Israelites, the so-called Mexicans, Central Americans, the so-called Tainos in the islands. Those all consist of Israelites, Northern Kingdom. And they had their civilizations, which were great, and ultimately taken over, forced Christopher Columbus and different other conquerors. You had Amerigo Vespucci, etc. And these so-called conquistadors, Edomites, which came over here, and the worst of the worst of the Edomites, and they came over and pillaged our people. And then ultimately those so-called Arabs and Africans, which we know as Hamites, and those Edomites, which were so-called kings then, which took over the Moors and started coming into power and putting themselves as the kings and the rulers in the U's. They pretty much gathered us so-called blacks from the west coast of Africa and brought them over as slaves. Now, even when you look at the Western Hemisphere, they our people were a people that tilled the land and was how you say it, farmers, so to speak. And I'm gonna tie this in with this, and I'm also going to, that was part of our customs, farming, etc. And this is why ultimately America was able to prevail and become so great, and also going to the usage of our people into those wars and gain a lot of independence. So let me go in. So the question touches on two separate historical and sociological topics: the socioeconomic shift of Black Americans from agricultural work to urban life. And when we got there, again, we was also deprived, slaved. And one thing you can read about is ancient Egypt, how we built and made Egypt great back in ancient times. The reason why Pharaoh in Egypt was so great a monopolist then was because of Israelites. Also, really, when you look at all these civilizations, Babylonian Empire, etc., and even to America, which is known as spiritual Egypt. America became great because they had Israelites there, which did what? Free labor and tilled and created and invented different aspects of the American society. So, in the etymology and complex evolution of the controversial term nigger, the word is rooted in historical oppression but has been recontextualized within the black community. Now, when you go to the scripture, there's a word called niger, nigger, which just simply means black. But you had Esau that couldn't use the word and pretty much made a derogatory term, a byword out of that name. And the hatred that the so-called white man had for our people, you know, it went from um, again bringing us over here, knowing who we were, and knowing that Esau had a great empire. The what is it? The wound that was the deadly wound that was healed. The extension of the Roman Empire was to be pretty much brought up. Esau had to pretty much rule over our people in a very how you say deceitful, deceptive way. So he pretty much allowed, we built. He uses the slaves in agriculture work, and then ultimately, due to the so-called what is it? This wait, what was that shit called? Independence. When he so-called granted us independence, and remember, the Illuminati was formed in 1776. So Esau had all his whole agenda written down on paper. So I say this to say this. Even during the first president all the way now, they had Amalek and those fake U's already had a plan for our people. So you migrated from the south, and then you migrated to the cities, the urban life to build up the city. And he gained you, and he lied to you, and he promised you freedom, work, slack freedom. That's a place, a safe place to dwell, and freedom, equality, and a surety. But Esau lied to us as a nation, and that whole promise, and pretty much that whole deceptive promise that he gave us was creating us to be niggas and pretty much to become criminals. Because remember, when you go into the Constitution, it went back and say, um, if you're a criminal, you can still be classified as a slave, if I'm not mistaken. And that was the purpose, to use you up as a nation, make Esau great, this kingdom great, and then when he's finished with us, he labeled us and created us to be criminals and niggas, and we're the problem of the earth, and then he rid of us. So those were, again, hope those were this is edifying. So it says economic and social migration. Historically, a significant portion of Black Americans were involved in Southern agriculture. And another thing too, knowing that we are indeed Israelites, the reason why America became great is because we were already known to be an agricultural people. Why? Because a lot of our high holy days has to do with and even our law, statute, commandments goes into farming. Let me bring that up. Let me see something. Let me pull this up. Let me see what it says. All right. So let me go back to this. So economic and social migration. Yeah, Black Americans were involved in Southern agriculture. largely as enslaved people and later as sharecroppers or tenant farmers following emancipation. The shift away from farming primarily occurred due to a number of factors. So it said the Great Migration from the 1910s to the 1970s, millions of so-called African Americans moved from the rural southern states to northern and midwestern industrial cities. They sought to escape Jim Crow laws, racial violence, and this was all a setup, and economic exploitation, looking for better job opportunities and living conditions, urbanization and industrialization, the demand for industrial labor in cities. Another scheme led to many to move from agricultural work to factory jobs, and certain numbers of Jake were able to do this, and then you had a lot of Jake, which because it says from 1970s, right? 1970s. Then you had that's when our grandparents was on the scene, was able to work for General Motors, doing great jobs, which had certain decent pensions that one man could. Um, I forgot what boomer. I forgot what generation that was. But they called them. You know, they was able to take care of your grandmother, have children, your aunts, your uncles. Um, your cousins was there. Came about your grandparents' brothers, grandparents' sisters. A lot of men were able, some, a great portion of so-called black men was able to work factory jobs. Then came the 1980s, the crack cocaine, and a lot of Jakes was felt to crack cocaine. The ones that weren't able to do anything, get jobs, and that was pretty much that was the scheme, that was the plan that Esau wanted. Because again, Jake worked for those industrial companies, those factories, those big corporate companies. And then what eventually happened, a lot of those companies did what they did. And then eventually what happened, they shipped them overseas. So a lot of Jake, again, a lot of our grandparents are dead now. And now that crack cocaine era that hit 1980s, going to the 90s, the gangster rap, and now this is what you're feeling the effect of what has happened. So again, we went from agricultural people, people that had, and again we had our own towns, etc. But you always had Esau in the mix to that was coming, burning our towns, waging war with us. So again, mechanization, mechanization of agriculture. Technological advances in farming reduced the need for manual labor in the South, pushing people to seek work elsewhere. So, however, even in northern cities, many face continual segregation, underfunded neighborhoods. That's the crack cocaine, the guns, etc., and systemic barriers to economic mobility, leading to the development of inner city. And one of the things that created inner city was the welfare, Section 8, the government assistance, and the crack cocaine and the violence. Communities that experienced their own unique social and economic struggles, and it was all created by the so-called white man, right? And Lord's will, you edified by this. I'm gonna try to tie this all into us being farmers and us being Israelites, because it's not a coincidence that one of the reasons why America became great is the fact that we knew how to farm, because that's part of our heritage, farming. And it's funny today because when you talk to a lot of Jake about farming and living off the land, these niggas will laugh at you. One of the in the last video I just did, going down to like Birmingham, you go to New Orleans, you go to different places like Jackson, Mississippi. When you go to those cities, a lot of those Jakes will be like, yeah, we city boys. You don't know nothing about that, etc. But I just find that funny. And coming to the East Coast, a lot of Jake there. You might see a little bit of it, but it's just funny because you expect to see when you go down south. And I'm talking about completely down south. You expect you like you go to Memphis, you go to places like Tennessee, etc. You would think that's Jake as a whole, but nah, that whole spirit of just farming, living off the land is died out. Jake don't have the chicken. Jake don't have the goats. Jake don't have the lamb, the sheep, the horses, the etc. And I get it. That shit is. You have Edomites that's complaining, but again, you know, we don't give a damn about Esau complaining. Because this is the how you say it. This is the damn. This this is how was ordained for us. To be oppressed. So the evolution of the term nigga, the term in question has a distinct and complex linguistic and social history separate from economic transition described above. Origins: the word originated as a derogatory slur, a variant of the term Negro, used by so-called white people to demean and dehumanize black people during slavery and the Jim Crow era. It was a tool of racial oppression and construction of white supremacy. So again, nothing has changed. And Jake is crying now and asking, why is this and why is that? Well, nothing has ever changed. So reclamation and recontextualization in recent decades, particularly within hip hop culture and African American vernacular English, the word has been reappropriated and recontextualized within the black community. But at the end of the day, it still goes back to the derogatory term. Used internally, often spelled with an A at the end, nigga, it expressed solidarity, friendship, or shared experience reflecting awareness of community history and resilience. But overall, our people don't know who they are. So we went from all these derogatory terms of reproach, a byword, and at the end of the day, we don't acknowledge ourselves as being Hebrew Israelites. We always call each other, "What's up, nigga? What's up, my nigga?" Da da da. But that's not what we are. We are Hebrew Israelites. Now, let me. Okay. So Israelites farming in the Bible, I put into Google. Um, it says AI overview. Yes, farming was central to Israelite life in the Bible, shifting from a nomadic to an agrarian society after conquering Canaan. Let me see. The Bible details numerous agricultural practices, including plowing with oxen, harvesting wheat and barley, and cultivating vineyards and olive groves. This agrarian lifestyle was deeply connected to their laws and religious festivals, with biblical law dictating practices like the 70-year fallow period and major holidays marking the agricultural season. So, again, one of the reasons why we were so great, America became so great, because what we already knew about farming. We're not, how the way Esau was depicted as being dumb niggas, we were far from that. Agricultural practices, land and tools. After settling in the Canaan land, the land was divided among families, and a large portion of the population engaged in farming. Farmers used a simple wooden plow drawn by oxen, and the land was prepared in the autumn after the first rains. Terracing was used on hillsides to maximize the land's use. Crops, staple crops included wheat and barley, which were essential to the diet and the harvest festivals. The region was also well suited for vineyards, olive groves, figs, and pomegranates. Labor. While many Israelites farmed their own land, others worked as hired laborers on larger estates. The Bible also mentions laws designed to ensure the poor had access to food, such as leaving unharvested crops in the fields for the poor to glean. See that? So pretty much how the way the Lord had us as a nation, everybody was taken care of. It's not supposed to be what you see today, like you see here in America. Laws and religious significance. The Sabbath year, Yahweh commanded that the land lie fallow every seventh year. The Sabbath year to allow it to regenerate. Jubilee year. In the Jubilee year, families would regain any ancestral land they had lost, helping to prevent extreme inequality over time. So the Lord was fair. So we were created to be fair with each other. So you wouldn't have wars and disputes like you see amongst our people now. But ultimately, here in America, you can forget about it. That's why America has to be destroyed by thermonuclear missiles and by the angels and the chariots of the Lord and Yahweh Shah. Festivals, the biblical calendar was deeply tied to the agricultural cycle. Passover celebrated at the start of the barley harvest. Feast of the Weeks, Pentecost marked the end of the wheat harvest. Feast of Tabernacle celebrated the final harvest. Let me see. Divine blessing. The fertility of the land was seen as a sign of Yahweh's favor and fulfillment of his promises. Conversely, drought and famine were often presented as consequences of disobedience. So again, the land being agricultural, a nomad. Let me see something. What is a nomad? Mm, so let me see. Laws of the Bible that has to do with farming. I put in this says gleaning. Salaki, hold on, I'm going to go up. The KJV Bible contains several farming laws, primarily from the Old Testament, focused on land rest, social justice for the poor and sojourners, and stewardship. Key laws include letting the land rest in the seventh year, leaving gleanings for the poor, planting in the fifth year after a 3-year cycle of circumcised period for fruit trees, and allowing a neighbor to eat from their field or vineyard. Land rest and use, Sabbath year for the 6 years, sow your land and gather its produce, but in the seventh year, let the land rest completely. The poor and wildlife can then eat what grows on its own. Exodus 23:10-11. Jubilee year, the 50th year is a jubilee, a holy year where the land is to have its rest. Leviticus 25:8-12. Fruit trees, after planting a fruit tree, you must not eat its fruit for 3 years. In the fourth year, the fruit is dedicated to the Lord, and in the fifth year, you may eat the fruit. Leviticus 19:23-25, Deuteronomy 20:6. Social justice for the poor, gleaning. When you reap your harvest, do not reap to the very edge of your field, and do not gather the fallen grain. Leave these for the poor and the foreigner. And a foreigner was an Israelite foreigner, not a fucking heathen. Leviticus 19:9-10, 23:22. Grapes and olives. Do not go back and pick the single grapes or olives that are left on the vines or trees. Leave them for the poor and the foreigner. Leviticus 19:10. Neighbors' fields. A person may eat the grain they find in their neighbor's field by hand, but they should not take any with them. Deuteronomy 23:24-25. Other agricultural laws. Do not mix crops or animals. You shall not sow your field with two different kinds of seed, or wear a garment made of two different kinds of material. You shall not crossbreed two different kinds of cattle. You shall not sow your vineyard with two kinds of seed. Leviticus 19:19, 23, 22. So hey, let me see. Restitution for damage. And that's another thing too, Jake, here in America, we had to tend to animals. But again, we why we were good with animals is because even to this day, when you go to those horse races, Northern Kingdom is good with those horses. The horse races, I think you call them jocks, etc. And at one time, even Judah, the so-called black men, were good at horseback. So you still have some to this day. You had Gad, so-called Native Americans, etc. So if a man's beast damage another man's field or vineyard, he must make restitution for the best of his own field and vineyard. Exodus 22, 5 through 6. Fencing and falling. If a man builds a new house, he must build a parapet around the roof so that he does not bring the guilt of bloodshed on his house if someone falls from it. Deuteronomy 20:28. So, you know, you get pretty much get the point. We are people that we farm. We were agricultural people, people of the land, and it's very funny when you just had this whole notion of food stamps not able to go get put on your food stamps. You saw the outcry, but at one point in time, Jake could were hands on. You know, you tilled the land, you knew how to plant, you knew how to grow your own food, and even in the islands, man, that a lot of these old ways of our people, our grandfathers and great grandparents and etc. We knew how to do certain things. It has completely lost. And one thing for certain, the fact that Esau has been able to put a new cultural way of thinking and belief on TV, our people has fallen for it. Oh, Salaki, I said I did all this is I read all that. This is not read the Salaki. Jeremiah 3. Let me see. The Lord says, I'm going to just read the whole chapter. The Lord says, if a man divorces his wife and she leaves him and become another man's wife, he cannot. Let me see. Hold on. Now, I'm going to start at verse 6. When Josiah was king, the Lord said to me, have you seen what Israel, that unfaithful woman, has done? She had turned away from me, and on every high hill and under, this is the GNT, and under every green tree, she had acted like a prostitute. And one thing for certain, I read this so just so you can understand. We will put in the we will put underneath our enemies are put in the subjection to slavery and being conquered. Ultimately, is going to be a redemption. And the fact that we're learning who we are now in this grace period that we have, it just shows you the power of Yahweh Shem Shah. And this ultimately goes into a prophecy that's going to be fulfilled. So I thought that after she had done all this, she would surely return to me, but she did not return. And her unfaithful sister Judah saw it all. Judah also saw that I divorced Israel and sent her away because she had turned from me and had become a prostitute. So this is going into Northern Kingdom. But Judah, Israel's unfaithful sister, was not afraid. She too became a prostitute and was not or ashamed, because what we went off and we served other gods. We wanted to be like the heathen. Same thing today. A lot of our people, they want to be like the so-called white man. They want to go into the Arab way of thinking. They want to be Muslims. They want to be Islamic. They want to be Buddhists. They want to be everything else but who the Lord programmed and made us to be. She defiled the land. Yep, see that? So here it is. You have certain ways that we were supposed to ordain ourselves in the land, but we didn't do so. And she committed adultery by worshiping stones and trees. And after all this, Judah, Israel, unfaithful sister, only pretended to return to me. She was not sincere. The Lord have spoken. So it said, the Lord told me that even though Israel had turned away from him, she had proved to be better than unfaithful Judah. He told me to go and say to Israel, unfaithful Israel, come back to me. I am merciful and will not be angry. I will not be angry with you forever. Only admit that you are guilty and that you have rebelled against the Lord, your power. Confess that under every green tree you have given your love to foreign gods, and that you have not obeyed my commands. I, the Lord, have spoken. 14. Unfaithful people come back. You belong to me. I will take one of you from each town and two from each clan, and I will bring you back to Mount Zion. And that's going to be, when those chariots come back. The elect, starting with the elect, and I will give you rulers who obey me, and they will rule with wisdom, understanding. And that's what you see in the day with the prophets. Then when you have become numerous in the land that will no longer talk about my covenant box. This is in the GNT. They will no longer think about it or remember it. They would not even need it, nor would they make another one. When that time comes, Jerusalem will be called, because when the Lord restore us, we're going to be perfect. So when that time comes, Jerusalem will be called the throne of the Lord, and all nations will gather there to worship me. And that's going to be all the 12 tribes. They will no longer do what their stubborn and evil hearts tell them. Israel will join with Judah, because right now, you got to understand, Israel was conquered and Judah was brought over here. And you right now, you're seeing that gap that was prior open. You're seeing it being closed. So you're seeing so-called Latinos, Hispanics, and blacks, and West Indians and Native Americans deal amongst each other, because we're finding out that we are the children of Israel, and together they will come from exile in the country of the north, which is North America, and will return to the land that I gave your ancestors as a permanent possession. Let me see something. Um, yeah, 19. The Lord said, Israel, I wanted to accept you as my child and give you a delightful land, the most beautiful land in all the world, which is Israel. I wanted you to call me father and never again turn away from me. But like an unfaithful wife, you have not been faithful to me. I, the Lord, have spoken. And noise is heard on the hilltops. It is the people of Israel crying and pleading because they have lived sinful lives and have forgotten the Lord, their power. Return, all of you who have turned away from the Lord. He will heal you and make you faithful. And that's what he's doing, restoring us, starting with the elect. Let me see. You say, yes, we are coming to the Lord because he is our power. We're not helped at all by our pagan worship on the hilltops. Because look at us, look, since we have followed the so-called white man ways in this American way, look at what it has gotten us. We're still shouting out. Lamentations 4:19. Help for Israel comes only from the Lord our power, not the white man, not the government, not the Senate, not the president, not Donald Trump, nobody. But the worship of Baal, the god of shame, has made us lose flocks and herds. And this is what has happened to our people. We ultimately have lost our identity. And that goes into what is it? Psalms, damn. Psalms 83. Yep, Psalms 83. Sons and daughters, everything that our ancestors have worked for since ancient times. We should lie down in shame and let our disgrace cover us. We and our ancestors have always sinned against the Lord our power. We have never obeyed his commands. But the Lord is working and dealing with an elect, and he's going to restore us once again. But Lord, who's edified, I'm going to close this thing out. With that, we say shalom.